Hi everyone, for today's video, we will discuss what is scalar and vectors quantities. But first, let us define the scalar. Scalar are quantities that are specified by magnitude only. A magnitude tells us the numerical value and unit of a quantity. To make it short, scalar is all about the magnitude. Let us also define what is the vectors. Vector is a quantity that has a magnitude and direction, and that is commonly represented by a directed line segment whose length represents the magnitude and whose orientation in space represents the direction. To make it short, vectors has the magnitude and also the direction. Solving vectors addition is about finding the distance and the displacement of a given problem. To understand the concept of vectors, let me give you one example. Two dogs, Lupe and Lupita, start from the same point A. Lupe went 8 km north and then 7 km west. Lupita went 8 km east and 9 km south. Determine the distance traveled by each dog. Letter B, displacement of each dog from the point A. So here's the diagram for our problem. To find the distance, combine the distance traveled in any direction of each dog. Lupe traveled 7 km west, 8 km north. Combine 8 plus 7 equals 15. So Lupe traveled 15 kilometers. For Lupita traveled 8 km east, 9 km south. Combine 8 plus 9 equals 16. So the total number or the total distance traveled by Lupita is equal to 16 km. Since we are done with the distance, let us now solve for the displacement. Displacement is a vector whose length is the shortest distance from the initial to the final position of the point P undergoing motion. So here is the diagram showing the difference between the distance and the displacement. The distance is the total path and the displacement is the shortest path. Displacement can be found using the Pythagorean theorem. But what is Pythagorean theorem and why is it connected in finding the displacement of a vector? Pythagorean theorem, the square of the length of the hypotenuse of the right triangle equals the sum of the square of the length of the other two sides. But take note of this. Pythagorean theorem works only with the right triangles. Resultant vector represents by two or more vectors which form a right triangle and may be computed by applying the Pythagorean theorem. So that is why Pythagorean theorem is related in solving for the displacement of a vector. So let us solve for the displacement using the Pythagorean theorem in our problem. Let us solve first for the displacement traveled by Lupe, which is 7 km west and 8 km north. The formula that we are going to use is the Pythagorean formula, which is c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. But we all know that it is impossible to find for the resultant vectors if c is squared. So we are going to find the square root of the both side. So the square root of c is equal to the square root of a squared plus b squared. Therefore, we are able to cancel for the c squared is equal to the square root of a squared plus b squared. So, this is the formula that we are going to use in solving for the resultant vectors, which is c is equal to the square root of a squared plus b squared derived from the Pythagorean theorem. Let us now substitute the given to our formula. C is equal to the square root of 7 squared plus 8 squared is equal to 49, or the square root of 49 plus 64 is equal to the square root of 113. So the square root of 113 is 10.63. Therefore, the resultant vector of Lupe is 10.63 km northwest. Since we are done solving for the resultant vector, let us solve for the magnitude. Solving for the magnitude, we are going to use the tangent theta is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. But how can we find out what is the opposite and adjacent in a right triangle? We can find out it based on the angle theta. The angle theta is here, therefore, the opposite will be here. Since we are done finding for the opposite and adjacent, the opposite will be 8 and the adjacent will be 7. So, divided by equal to 1.1. To look for the magnitude, press in the calculator shift, tangent, and the answer, which is 1.1, and there is the number. The first two digit or the whole number will be the degrees that you are going to get. Since we all done solving for the resultant vector and magnitude traveled by Lupe, so the total displacement of Lupe is 10.63 km with a magnitude or degrees of 47 degrees northwest. Let us now solve for the displacement of Lupita. Lupita traveled 8 km east and 9 km south. Substitute to the formula, which is C is equal to the square root of A squared plus B squared equals to the square root of 8 squared plus 9 squared is equal to the square root of 64 plus 81 equals the square root of 145. The square root of 145 is 12.04. The resultant vector traveled by Lupita is 12.04 kilometers southeast. Let us now solve for the magnitude using the formula TOA, which is tangent is over the opposite over the adjacent. Our opposite will be 9 since our theta is on the angle A. So 9 over 8 is equal to 1.1. So repeat the step before, which is press the calculator shift, tangent, and the answer 1.1. So our magnitude will be 47. There is many number but only get the first whole number in the calculator. So our magnitude will be 47 degrees. Since we all done finding the resultant vector and magnitude traveled by Lupita, so the displacement of Lupita is 12.04 km with a magnitude of 47 degrees southeast. So that ends our discussion about the scalar and the vector. I hope you learned something. Thank you for watching.